Hello and welcome to yet another exciting episode of TimeXtender Tuesdays. I'm Harish, a solution specialist with TimeXtender. In this episode, we're going to discuss how to set up a TimeXtender app server. And without any further ado, let's jump straight into the topic. Before we get into the details of TimeXtender app server, I think it is important to understand what is an app server and why do we even need it. To understand the landscape, we need to first have a look into the TimeXtender architecture, and then we will go into the details of how to set up a TimeXtender app server. As most of you already know, TimeXtender has three main components. First one you see here is the ODX server, which we will see in detail in a few minutes. The other components are the TimeXtender desktop, from where the developer creates, transforms, prepares data and do all the data massaging. The third major part of TimeXtender is the portal, from where most of the administrative tasks are completed. It is from here where you create your instances like ODX, MDW or the SSL instances. You create, edit and create the data sources, and all these administrative tasks are carried out from the TimeXtender portal. So, what really is the app server, which we saw as the major component of TimeXtender architecture? It is nothing but a Windows-based software which can be installed on a physical or a virtual machine, which performs some critical tasks in the TimeXtender landscape. This is the software which orchestrates the data ingestion from different sources into the TimeXtender data estate. Additionally, it also acts as the scheduler service, which is responsible for scheduling all the jobs and tasks for a project. Now, as we realize how critical an app server is for a TimeXtender landscape, let's look into the ways how we can set up an app server. If you're looking for the fastest way to implement a TimeXtender app server, we have a pre-configured VM image in the Azure Marketplace, which can be easily installed and set up within minutes. You also obviously have the option of manually setting it up. The only catch is you will have to download and install all the TimeXtender related softwares in that physical server and then set it up. Whereas in a pre-configured VM, you have all the latest softwares installed automatically. All you need to do is set up your storage accounts and get going from there. In this session, for the interest of time, we will use the first option, where we will locate the pre-configured VM image from the Azure Marketplace and then do the setup and configurations and then get the app server running. First things first, let's first open your Azure portal. So in your Azure portal, on the top, you will see the marketplace, or else you can search. If it is not visible, you can search from the universal search on the top. Let's go into the marketplace and look for TimeXtender. Please don't get confused here, as you're seeing multiple options. The one you have to look for is the TimeXtender application server, this one, which has the latest Windows Server 2022 installed, right? So we will go for that option. From the Azure Marketplace, you have the option of creating a VM with some preset configurations here, where you can select whether you want it for production or dev environment. Based on that, the availability and the backups are decided for you, or you can optimize it for memory or compute based on your scenario. Right? These are the options. You don't have to use it, or you can just go ahead and create here. Let's quickly fill in the key information here. First one is the resource group. Let's select one resource group where you want to keep all your TimeXtender related resources in Azure. I'm just using one of which I use for demos and trainings. Okay. and then you have to give your virtual machine a name according to your cloud naming standards. So in this case, I'm going for VM HKM app server. Region based on wherever you're located. I am in the US West, so I'm selecting that. Depending on what you want to achieve from this VM, you will have to select the size. Keep in mind that if you're using ADO.NET components for the data transfer, the resources of this VM is what is getting used when the data is really getting transferred. So if you are setting this up for some real production activities or the day which has a lot of data transfer using ADO.NET, then you might have to consider allocating more memory to this VM. Or if you are just using this VM to learn TimeXtender and to understand how it all works together, a basic RAM should be fine. So in this case, let's go with a basic one, which is it can support either 8 or 16. I'll go with 16. Next, let's set up the admin account and the password. Give an appropriate username and a long enough password. Okay, awesome. Based on how you want your VM to be accessed from the public internet, you can define your inbound port rules. In this case, we will select the default one, which is the RDP. Once all these required fields are filled in, we can go ahead and click on review and create. With all the inputs what we have given, the validations have passed, and now let's click on create. It's going to take a couple of minutes. The deployment has completed now. You can see the message deployment is complete, and now we can go to the resource and see what's in there. Here are all the details of the virtual machine which we just created, which is typically the app server here. You have all the properties listed, and now let's try to connect to the app server. Click on the connect button, and then you will have an option to download the RTP file. Click download, keep the file, and try to open it. It will ask for the credentials with which we should connect to the VM. Here, give the details of the admin user which you have created in the first step. Okay. I will provide the username and the password we set, and then try to connect. It will give us a warning on identity. Let's say yes, and we have connected to the app server. Give it some time, as it is the first time it is running. A lot of scripts are running behind the scenes to make sure you always have the latest TimeXtender software installed and all the services are up and running and ready for your consumption. Let's quickly look into what all things this Azure VM has come pre-installed. So as you have seen from the VM, the first page itself is taking you to the VM Get Started page. We will come back to this page to follow all these steps step by step. Before that, I would like to quickly show you what all things are already pre-installed here. You can see the latest TimeXtender version desktop is here. Desktop version is installed here. Then here you have the link which we just saw, the web page which opened the Start Here TimeXtender VM. Then you have the TimeXtender ODX server configuration, as well as the TimeXtender execution configuration. All these will be the latest and updated version whenever you are creating your VM. Cool. Now let's go back to the Start Here page and have a quick walkthrough on what's there. As you can see here, there are some quick links on the top where you can jump into our training or get the latest SQL Server or ask the community, get the SSMS, TimeXtender Portal, or all these links are provided on the top. Let's try to follow these steps one by one and try to configure the app server. So the first step is configuring the storage resource. Now this is solely depend on what you are trying to do with this VM. If you are looking for a production environment, then you might have to consider all the reference architecture which are listed here based on what platform or what storage you want to use for your solution. Some examples is given here is you can set up the entire data estate on Azure SQL databases. You can configure the storage on that, or you can do it even on an on-premise SQL server. That's also an option that you have. If you click there, you will see the reference architecture documents, details, how to do that, right? You even have an option to set all the data warehouse storage on a Snowflake or even on an Azure Synapse dedicated pool. So that's all comes into picture if you are looking for a real production environment or a real-time scenario. Now, if you are just trying things out and trying to learn, a sandbox would be good enough for you. So let's click there and see what is available. Once you have configured your sandbox and installed SQL Server or using an existing SQL Server, that part is cleared, we can move on to the second step in the process, which is signing into the TimeXtender Portal. Right. So if you already are a customer and you have account with the TimeXtender Portal, you can log in, or else you can start free using app.timextender.com. Let's quickly see how a completely new user can sign up with TimeXtender from this portal. Just click on the Start Free and then provide an email ID and a password and name and the company name. Just select I accept the terms and click on the button Sign Up for Free. After this step, head on to your inbox where you will find a new email from TimeXtender. It's an email to verify your email ID. Just click on it, verify it for the next process to go smoothly. Once you click on the Start Free Trial button, a new pop-up window will open where the TimeXtender Portal is logged in with the account you have created. You can see the name here which I have given for the account, and it is created. Now this is a freemium edition which has limited capabilities but have most of the features which the premium also supports. Now let's see what is the next step in the process. Let's go back to the document, which is VM Get Started document, and see what's the next step. Step number 3 is adding the ODX instance. Now how we can do that? Let's go back to the portal and click on Add ODX Instance. Give it a name. Let's give it ODX Sandbox and gives the description ODX for Sandbox environment. And here on the storage type, as this is a freemium edition, you have only option of selecting the SQL database storage. But once you decide to convert to premium, you will have the Azure Data Lake storage support as well. Now let's set up the SQL Server storage, which is going to be the storage for the ODX what we are configuring. Let's give the server name. It can be localhost if the server is installed on the same server, or any of the SQL Server wherever you have installed. Just make sure you have access to that server. I'm using one of the Azure SQL Server which I have access to. Once an ODX instance is successfully created, you will see the window like this, where inside of data estate instances, you will see the newly created instance listed here. Awesome. Now that we have created the ODX instance, now let's run the ODX configuration. Minimize all the windows and go to your desktop. Here you will find the ODX server configuration icon. double click open it and click on next. If you are behind a proxy, provide the details here. We can just proceed and then you will have to sign in. Remember, before signing in, this has to be the same account with which you have created the ODX instance. Provide your email ID and password on the window and click on sign in. As you can see, the ODX instance which we created in the portal is now showing up here in the ODX server configuration. Click on next. There are some advanced options which you can configure if you need to, but for this installation, we can just leave it as it is. Click on next and you can choose the local system account, or if you have other service accounts, which you can use that as well, and click on save. So now this will make sure the ODX server is up and running in the server where you are configuring it. We can verify that by looking at the services running on the machine. To verify if the ODX service is up and running successfully, you can go to the services and look for the TimeXtender ODX service. It should be running now in the running state, and that ensures the ODX server configuration is complete. A quick recap: we have created an ODX instance in the portal. We saw that same instance is now configured on the ODX configuration and the service is running. The next step is to open the TimeXtender desktop app. When you open the TimeXtender desktop app for the first time, it will ask you for the login. Here again, you will be giving the same account with which we logged into the portal and the ODX server configuration. As you can see on the desktop app, on the Solution Explorer, you can see the ODX which we have just created, ODX Sandbox. Double click open the ODX Sandbox. The first time you are opening the TimeXtender desktop app, you need to configure the storage. For that, right click on the ODX instance and click on Edit Instance. Here you will see a Create Storage option. Go ahead and click on the Create Storage. So this will make sure the database name which you have given while setting up the ODX instance on the portal is getting created now. Just select the default options and press OK. It will take a couple of minutes to create the database and do the initial setup, but this is only the first time when you are opening the TimeXtender desktop app. So now you got the message that the database is created. Awesome. Click OK. You can test the storage connection as well, connected successfully to the database storage. And that is the last major step we need to do to configure your TimeXtender app server. Let's have a quick look on the solution architecture of a TimeXtender setup. First we saw the admin portal, then we configured the ODX server, and finally we saw setting up TimeXtender desktop. In this case, we set up the TimeXtender desktop on the app server itself, which works fine. You also can install the TimeXtender desktop app on other machines outside of the app server. This approach of having the TimeXtender desktop app outside of ODX server is mostly recommended in real-world scenarios. The key advantage of installing TimeXtender desktop on local developer's machine and connecting to the ODX server is that multiple users can simultaneously connect to the ODX server and work on it. One important point to note here is that even though the TimeXtender desktop app is in different machines, the data transfer is not happening through the local machines or wherever it is installed. Let's quickly see how the data movement is happening in TimeXtender. It can be triggered in two ways. One, from the TimeXtender desktop app by the developers or the users. Another way of triggering a data movement is by scheduling the tasks or jobs which you want to run at a particular time or interval. Even for the case when the data transfer initiation is happening from the TimeXtender desktop by users, the data is never transferred through the local machines. You can see that the data, which is here in the gray arrow, is always passed on through either the ODX server using ADO.NET technologies, or you have the option of using Azure Data Factory. To transfer data from the sources to the ODX storage, you can adopt multiple ways inside of TimeXtender. By default, TimeXtender will use the VM resources to transfer the data, the app server VM resources. But you can also configure ADF to do this job of transferring data from the source to the destination. So depending on the volume and velocity of the data, you can decide which technologies to use to transfer from the source to the destination. So if it is a wide table with a lot of columns and millions of records of data coming in on a daily basis, it will be highly recommended to use an Azure Data Factory to get the job done. And that brings us to the end of this episode, where we learned how to configure a TimeXtender ODX server. Soon we'll see again with another content and another topic. Thank you.